Sixsational Saturday. This is your boy Hawk. And I mean, just here with a little hoops talking squawk about the Philadelphia 76ers. You know, in their 60th anniversary season, which was far from the fantastic ending that we had expected with all that transpired during the season. You know, and be his MVP year, winning back-to-back scoring titles, James Harden leading the league in assists. This is only the 5th time that's happened in NBA history where the scoring champion and the assist champion were on the same team. And this is the first time it's happened since 1981-82 when George Gervin and Johnny Moore led the NBA in scoring. Gervin scoring and Johnny Moore assists. So that's, you know what I mean, quite a accomplishment. You know, Sixers also for the first time, also had their most wins since 2001, winning 54 games against 28 defeats. You know, good for 3rd seed in the East. You know, swept the first round. Man, that Boston series, like, that's got to be one of the most disappointing endings in team history, just for the simple fact that we were up 3-2 with Game 6 at home, a chance to close it out. Not only finally beat the Celtics in the playoffs, which hasn't been done since 1982, but also get out the second round for the first time since 2001. So this was a chance, you know what I mean, to hit on a double, like a double sixation. Finally beat the Celtics in the playoffs for the first time in 41 years, while advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 22 years. And this is why I can't understand, you know what I mean, all the Embiid fanboys and the blind Sixer homers just pretend Game 6 didn't happen. I'm not even going to talk about Game 7, because Game 7 should have never even happened. You know what I mean? So Game 7 doesn't even count in Hawks' vision. But Game 6, we're at home. And man, that building would have exploded. All we had to do was hold on. And people try to make it like, oh, the Celtics were some great team that came back and won. Like, nah, like, see, if you're a real hoops enthusiast like me and others, you can see, you know what I mean, the Celtics already look defeated. They already look defeated. I watched them heading back to the timeout before they went on that run, and you could just see and sense the defeat. Nah. Yeah, Tatum came through in the clutch, but that's because the Sixers folded. They folded big time. I said, I'm not taking nothing away from Tatum, a.k.a. Kobe Light, but Sixers gave that shit away. Like, you can't tell me or anybody else that knows any better otherwise. Game 6 at the crib. You're up 3 games to 2. Like I said, the chance to not only finally beat the Celtics, but advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. You know what I mean? This is the 10th year of this so-called process. Whatever happened there, whatever you want to call it. But man, And then for it to end like that, for Embiid not to get the ball or demand the ball for the final 4 minutes of the game, it's just atrocious. You know what I mean? Let that have been a bum team like the Hornets, he would have been demanding the ball every trip down. Remember that 53-point game he had against Charlotte where every time down, he demanded the ball. He was bound and determined to go for 50 that night. You know what I mean? Where was that mindset in Game 6? And people like, oh, he was triple team, what you want him to do, blah, blah, blah. That don't stop him no other time. Like, stop pump faking and making excuses. You know what I mean? And B's been receiving a lot of hate. You know what I mean? Some of it unnecessary, but most of it is well justified. Because, come on, man. Game 6 at home, you're the MVP. You know what I mean? But I'm not even going to lay all the blame on him. You know what I mean? I'm not even going to lay all the blame on him. How about Harden? Only 13 points. Didn't do shit in that fourth quarter. And people like, well, if it wasn't for Harden, we wouldn't have been there. Yeah, I get that. He won us Game 1 and Game 4. You know what I mean? You can't take that away from him. But it just always seems like this dude chokes under pressure. You know what I mean? And I used to defend him for years when he was with Houston and how he choked in 2017 against the Spurs and the following year against the Warriors when they were also up 3-2 and had Game 7 at home. You know what I mean? But then how about Mr. Overpaid Tobias Harris? You know what I mean? Only, 2 damn points in an elimination game. Like 2 fucking points. You know what I mean? $180 million man. In 42 minutes, only 2 damn points on 1 for 7 shooting. Like I said, Embiid doesn't get all the blame for that failure. He gets most of it because he's the MVP and a star of the team. And then people want to use the excuse, well, he's hurt. Yeah, I mean, plenty of greats were hurt when they won. Kobe won a ring with a broken hand, broken finger. You know what I mean? All these making excuses. But anyway, that was the disappointing ending to this season. So that makes it official 40-year drought without a championship. But while we're speaking on championships, while the Sixers only have 3 as a franchise and 2 as the 76ers, with the first one coming as the Syracuse Nationals back in 1955, we should have 9 to 10 championships as the 76ers alone, but that's another topic for another video. That's further talking Squawk with your boy Hawk. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about the 3 franchise championships that banners actually hang in the rafters. You know what I mean? And I'm going to start with the franchise's very first championship in 1954-55. But before I get to that, this states how the 3 franchise championships are all among the most historic and best championship seasons in league history. You know what I mean? No doubt the 83 and the 67 team are in most top 10 of all-time great championship teams. But the 1955 Syracuse Nationals, what makes that championship so historic is that it's the first NBA title of the shot clock era. Syracuse Nationals owner Danny Biasone came up with the 24-hour shot clock concept to speed up the game. Because before that, you had some extremely low-scoring games, like a 19-18 game, because teams would just hold the ball. You know, there was no shot clock, so you could hold the ball and run out damn near half the quarter on one possession. Just passing the ball back and forth, dribbling around, and all that. So the late, great Danny Biasone came up with the 24-hour shot clock, sped the game up, and in that first season, the Syracuse Nationals, led by Hall of Famer, the late, great Dolph Schayes, Paul Seymour, rookie Johnny Red Kerr, Earl Lloyd, coached by Al Servi, led the Nationals to a 43-29 record, which was first in the NBA's Eastern Division. You know, and they was tied with the Fort Wayne Pistons, who won the Western Division. See, back then it wasn't East and West Conference, it was East and West Division. You know what I mean? George Mikan had retired, so the Minneapolis Lakers dynasty was over. Even though they did reach the playoffs, losing to the Rochester Royals. Well, no, defeating the Rochester Royals and then losing to the Fort Wayne Pistons. So, matter of fact, yeah, George Mikan had retired that year. He eventually came back like a year later or something like that. But even without the great George Mikan, the NBA's first superstar, the Minneapolis Lakers reached the Western Division Finals and lost to the Fort Wayne Pistons. The Pistons beat them 3-1, and then the Syracuse Nationals won the championship in Game 7 over the Fort Wayne Pistons. You know, and if there had been a Finals MVP back then, surely it would have been Dolph Schayes. The Nationals won the series in 7 games, winning Game 7 in a 92-91 nail-biter in Syracuse. Man, just think about it. That's almost 70 years ago. You know, but I read the book on the Dolph Schayes era with the Nationals. There's a great book, one of my many, many great basketball reads. You know, when I say I'm a hoops enthusiast, but yeah, Dolph Schayes would have been the Finals MVP had the award been around. 19 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, played all 7 games. Now, to the Philadelphia 76ers first championship, which was actually the city of Philadelphia's first basketball professional championship since the Philadelphia Warriors won it in 1956. As we all know, they relocated to San Francisco following the 1961-62 season. Meanwhile, the Syracuse Nationals, following the 62-63 season, filled the basketball void in Philadelphia, and the team was renamed the Philadelphia 76ers. Anyway, couple years later, Wilt Chamberlain's traded back home to the new Philadelphia franchise. And in his third season, the Sixers, led by the late great Wilt Chamberlain, Hal Greer, also featuring fellow Hall of Famers Chet Walker, Billy Cunningham, and Philly native and Overbrook legend Wally Jones, a fellow Panther Hawk, and Luke Jackson, rest in peace, the game's first true power forward, revolutionized the power forward position, and coached by the great Alex Hannum. The 76ers won 68 games against 13 defeats, beat the Cincinnati Royals led by Oscar Robertson 3-1, then finally defeated the Celtics 4-1, winning Game 5 at Convention Hall 140-116. That's when the crowd chanted "Boston is dead." Celtic fans, especially celebrity Celtic fans like Bill Simmons, the Sixers on the Celtics only lost because Red Auerbach was down in the front office and Bill Russell was the player coach. Man, Sixers was due a championship. We should have won it the year before, but again, that's another talking squawk with your boy Hawk for a later date. This is about the 66-67 championship team, who in my opinion is one of the greatest teams of all time. I don't get into all that which team is the GOAT, all-time GOAT team, but if doing a top 10 list or a list of the greatest teams, that 67 team is definitely up there with the other great teams. It's definitely up there. This was the year Wilt won his second, it was overall his third MVP, but it was his second straight. He would win it 3 years in a row from 66 to 68. But this was his third overall MVP and his second straight with the Sixers. Also led the league in rebounding. He led the team in scoring, but Rick Barry won the scoring title. Wilt's 7-year reign as scoring champion came to an end, but it was for the greater good. As Alex Hannum called it, the reconstruction of Wilt. But that is a great, great team, and also a later video we'll get into why that team didn't repeat or whatever, but the 1966-67 Philadelphia 76ers, definitely one of the GOAT teams. And Wilt Chamberlain definitely would have been Finals MVP had the award been around. And I'm going to do that in a later video too. All the who would have been MVP, like going back to pre-1969, who would have been Finals MVP, or how would things been if, or how would things look had there be a award for each conference. And I've been saying that for years, that each conference should have award winners. But Wilt definitely would have been the MVP of the 67 finals. No doubt. Even though he wasn't scoring 40 and 50 points like back in his Philadelphia Warriors days. He wouldn't have been on that time. But 17.7 points, almost 29 rebounds, 7 assists. Yeah, and the funny thing is, Wilt was 5th in scoring during that finals run. Hal Greer led the team with 26, followed by Chet Walker, 23.3. Wally Wonder, fellow Panther Hawk, West Philadelphian, averaged 20 points. He was 3rd. Billy Cunningham averaged almost 20. You know what I mean? But Wilt blew everybody away with his rebound and also led the team in assists. So the big homie definitely would have added finals MVP to go with his regular season MVP and his rebounding crown. You know what I mean? In 1980, during the NBA's 35th anniversary season, that 67 team was ranked the greatest team of all time at that point. Now remember, this was back when it was only 9 teams in the league. So you was playing a team, you know what I mean, like almost 10 times a year. Like I think they played Boston 9 times during a regular season. And it's funny because before that, teams played each other up to 13 times a year. It was 10 teams in the NBA in 1966-67. 5 in the Eastern Division and 5 in the Western Division. You know what I mean? So teams was playing each other up to 10 times a season. It's not like now where you might play a team 4 times a year at the most. You know what I mean? So the competition was way more steep. So you have to factor all of that in if you're going to actually rank teams. You know what I mean? That's what also makes it so difficult to do that, because you got to factor in the circumstances, the era, and all that. That's why I don't get into all that who's the greatest mess. You know what I mean? It's redundant. I mean, it makes for good conversation. But anyway, on to the franchise's third and most recent championship with the 1982-83 squad, coached by the sixth man of the 60-17 Billy Cunningham, featuring Hall of Famers, the late great Moses Malone, you know, Dr. J, in my opinion, one of the Sixer GOATs, along with Wilt and AI, Maurice Cheeks, Bobby Jones, and Andrew Toney, who would have been a Hall of Famer had he not, you know what I mean, had those unfortunate foot injuries. But the 82-83 squad finally broke through, led by league MVP, rebounding champion, NBA All-First Team on offense and defense, Moses Malone. You know what I mean? We won 65 games against 17 losses, the second most wins in franchise history. You know what I mean? Go 12-1 in the playoffs. We sweep the Knicks, go up 3-0 on the Bucks, but they take game 4 in Milwaukee, wrap it up 115-103 at the Spectrum, then sweep the Lakers in the championship. Now, cats love, especially Laker fans, they love to bring up, oh, if we had James Worthy and Norm Nixon and Bob McAdoo, Sixers would have won anyway. It may not have been a sweep. I'm not going to argue against that. But that was just the Sixers year. It is what it is. You can make that same excuse for every championship. You could say, oh, the Pistons only won in 89 because Magic and Byron Scott got hurt. You know what I mean? You could say that about Toronto in 2019. Oh, they only won because Kevin Durant missed the whole series damn near, and Klay Thompson missed a couple games. You know? It goes both ways. But you can use that against damn near every champion. You could say the Warriors won in 2015 because Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love didn't play. You see where I'm going with all this. But anyway, that was just the Sixers year. You know, and that 83 Lakers team, you know, I mean, was still a damn good team with the players that they had. You know, you had Kareem, you had Magic, Jamal Wilkes. Jamal Wilkes is the most slept-on Laker of that Showtime era. You know what I mean? He was one of my favorite Lakers from the Showtime era, along with Norm Nixon. You know? But even still, they still, Michael Cooper. You know what I mean? They still had a damn good team. Kurt Rambis. You know? But that was another historic team. And when you talk about the 82-83 team, their legacy is stained a little bit, because the next year with that same team, that next year you had the same 5 starters and the top 4 reserves: Bobby Jones, Clint Richardson, Clement Johnson, Franklin Edwards. They went out in the first round, so that kind of stains them, where a lot of the other all-time great teams, the next year they either repeated, won another championship if they was already in the midst of a dynasty or whatever, or at least got to the finals. Whereas the Sixers, had they went back, if they would have at least gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, a lot more people would big up that 83 team. But that was a great season. You know, we stormed through the league that year. And we would have won 70 games, but the team saw the bigger picture, and Billy Cunningham, he rested Doc and Moses down the stretch, because he knew we was going to possibly have to go through Boston and LA to get to the chip, but Milwaukee swept Boston. And that's another thing Bill Simmons makes excuses about, because, you know, he always likes to pick at the Sixers' history. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't root for a team with a legacy, 17 damn titles. You know what I mean? But he has to dumb down our little two as the Sixers. Come on now. If the Celtics if the Celtics got swept by the Bucks, what makes you think that they would have been fucking with us? And I don't care about splitting the regular season head-to-head 3-3. You know what I mean? We would demolish them in the playoffs as well. You know what I mean? The Celtics were, in a lot of ways, that 83 Celtics team reminds me of the 2019 team with Kyrie. You know what I mean? They had a lot of talent. They were going to win games, and they was going to get us as far as the second round. And it's ironic, both times they lost to Milwaukee. In 83, Milwaukee swept them. In 2019, Milwaukee won 4 straight on them after the Celtics managed to still gain 1 on the road. But that 83 Celtics team, that was the end of Bill Fitch. Casey Jones took over. You know what I mean? It was a wrap after that. Boston dominated the East for the next 4 or 5 seasons. So, 4 seasons. They went to the championship and won 2 out of the 4. But anyway, in 83, that was the Sixers' year. You know what I mean? Sadly, it's the most recent championship in franchise history. You know what I mean? Which is sad. Because it's like, man, 40 years is a long time. And I was just saying on a forum, like on social media, it's like, unless you're at least 45 to 46, around there, and even if you're around that age, your memories of 83 are vague, because you would have been 5 or 6 years old. So really, you would have to be like a good 50, which means you was about 10 in, to actually remember that 83 championship run. You know what I mean? At least. And like I said, the youngins of the of Sixers Nation 76, a lot of them are even too young to remember 2001. You know what I mean? I was coming out of high school in 2001, about to turn 18. You know what I mean? That was the time of my life as a teenager, because, like I said in a previous video about the Everything But the Chip documentary, I was around that team around that time. So, plus I was a season ticket holder at all the games. Went to a few road games. You know what I mean? So, people in my age bracket, we remember all of that. You know what I mean? Celebrating all over the city after we won the East. But like somebody, like the younger fans, what do they really have to look up to? Or like to fall back on? Like that little 2012 run to the second round with the Iguodala-led team. And I love that team. You know what I mean? And the even younger fans, all they really have is the Embiid era. And that's why a lot of them are caping for him and pretending that epic choke down the stretch of Game 6 didn't happen. You know what I mean? Shit, trust me, I wish that shit didn't happen. You know what I mean? I wish, but it is what it is. Now, we have the Nick Nurse era, coaching era to look forward to. Let's see what moves transpire throughout this off season. But until that next championship is won, just know that the 3 championship banners that do hang in the rafters at the Wells Fargo Center are 3 of the most historic and greatest championship teams in NBA history. This has been a little Hoops Talking Squawk with your boy Hawk. Hawk out.